Welcome, everybody. My name is Mina Jane. I'm the director of the Ashland Public Library in Massachusetts, and I'm super excited to be here with author Lynn Raebsamen, who is going to be talking about, oh my gosh, this book, Artificial Stupelligence, the hilarious truth about AI. And it's such a different take on AI that I just had to reach out to Lynn, and she was so quick in getting back to me and getting this program together. It was really amazing. So before we get started with her, I just want to say thanks to the Friends of the Ashland Public Library who support all of our programs, and we couldn't do it without them. I'd like to thank Lynn for letting us share this program with some fellow librarians and local libraries, because, of course, when libraries work together, we make magic. You can buy signed books by Lynn from Aesop's Fable, our favorite local indie bookstore. And if you live across the pond as Lynn does, I'm sure she'll have some ideas of where you can find signed books as well, maybe on her website. So we'll have some information about that in the follow-up email that you'll all receive. Um, as if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A, which is a button at the bottom of your screen. The chat is for you guys to chat with each other so that you can, comment on things that you think are fascinating, as I will. So, Lynn is a finance expert and tech enthusiast, and her book, Artificial Stupelligence, The Hilarious Truth About AI, just came out in May, and it's a laugh out loud guide to the brilliance and blunders of AI. And if you read her, if you read her bio, she has some reviews which are actually quite hilarious. I'm just going to read one of them. The aspiring robot butler. Oh, wait, I have to put reviews in quotes. The aspiring robot butler says, "I learned more about AI from this book than from all of my failed attempts to program a Roomba to fetch my beer." So that's why it's in quotes, but obviously this is going to be really fun. So welcome, Lynn. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Mina. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So, can you tell us, like, that was a quick overview of the book and yourself. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then obviously we're going to get right into the book.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone. Great to see everybody around the world dialing in here. My name is Lynn Raebsamen. I'm based in Switzerland, as Mina has mentioned. I'm executing digital strategies by day, and I'm writing tech tales by night. And it was actually one aha moment that ultimately inspired me to write Artificial Stupelligence. It was the moment when I realized that AI still has a long way to go to replace us humans. And today you'll hear this and some other hilarious but also painfully true AI fail stories. So I hope that we'll have the ability, we'll cut through the current AI hype, and I'll share why sometimes the only thing that is intelligent about AI is actually the marketing.
Hmm. So, let's go back to what you just said about the aha moment, because that's always interesting to me. Is like, what really inspired you to write this book?
So the year was 2019, and we had layover in Seattle on our way to Alaska, and that's when we passed by one of those much hyped tech marvels of that time. It was the Amazon Go Just Walk Out stores. I'm sure you have heard of them, or
Hmm.
maybe even have been in one of them. So my partner and I wanted to experience how they worked, and we downloaded the app. We scanned into the shop, and we grabbed a couple of candies and bars and just walk out. And that's the concept that they were marketing, right? You can just grab whatever you want and just walk out. And within a few minutes, we received the receipt on our phones. And at that time, we were blown away and asked ourselves, how do they do it? So we looked around, it's just like, wow, is somebody watching us? And then we were told that it was AI, right? Computer vision cameras that could see what you picked up. And it was a fully automated process. And while we were fascinated by the technology, it also sparked some concerns. And we asked, if this is the future, are there still going to be humans left in retail by the time our flight boards, right? So, and spoiler from the future, yes, all of them are still going to be there, all of them, and plus 1,000 more apparently. And I'm getting to the story. So, flash forward to 2024, and Amazon shuts down the whole thing. And we were like, wait, what? If the technology is so advanced, why kill it?
Hmm.
And as a curious mind, I dug deeper, and sure enough, not much later, it was all over the news. Amazon's critically acclaimed AI computer vision technology was, drum rolls, an army of around 1,000 human employees in Bangalore. Each one of them watching camera feeds, recording what you put into your pocket, and making sure that you didn't walk out with that extra granola bar.
So that
Yeah.
that situation was totally a lie. It wasn't AI. It wasn't machines.
No, it wasn't. And just as I finished writing Artificial Stupelligence, another scandal just dropped. And another company called Builder.ai, a company that claimed to replace all human coders, had raised a whopping $450 million, $500 million, and they filed for bankruptcy. And it turned out, the AI turned out to be, and you guessed it, another outsourced battalion of 700 human coders based in India, and frantically writing code, to replace coders. So, anyone here also struggling with that logic?
Well, I'm not great at math, but that doesn't seem to be adding up to me. Like,
the
okay.
well, the hard truth is, AI cannot evolve further without humans. Okay, and the company Scale AI, probably heard of them. Just got acquired for a whopping 14.8 billion, I think, by Meta. They also use armies of human laborers in developing countries to label data. I'll get into the data labeling a little bit later to explain to you, why is the human still needed in that loop. Um, but so the narrative is, well, this all this data labeling, right? It's like it's low labor jobs and so on. And the narrative is, at some point, AI should be able to learn and label data on its own, and then you can take the human out of the loop. And well, at least for now, this is more science fiction than reality.
Hmm.
And experts in the field have pointed to a phenomenon called the model collapse. So AI models are trained that are trained exclusively on artificial or synthetically generated data. They begin to lose their connection to the real world because they're not fed with real data,
Mm.
and they start producing nonsensical and inaccurate outputs. So this is where all the hallucination comes from. And it also was proof that the models, they will break down at a certain level of complexity, and they would not even make an effort to produce sensible results. And this just underscores the role of fresh human verified data in keeping AI models grounded and effective.
Hmm.
And here's the catch. So as the AI models become more sophisticated, so must the data labelers. Right? It's that the first couple of years when we fed the data, it was very basic data. This is a cat, this is a dog, and um, that kind of labeling could have been easily done by some workers, uh, out of developing countries. But now it's getting more complex, right? We're now starting to um, analyze, like imaging of cancer in healthcare, and you will just need much more qualified personnel to label data going forward if you want that AI to evolve. So in this process, AI will pre-label data, and humans are responsible for reviewing, correcting, and refining the output. And it just shows that the need for engineers, for doctors, for linguists that are qualified to label that data going forward, it means it becomes exponentially more costly for companies to advance with their AI models. And that's a major factor. I know that everybody is talking about, that AI is going to become super intelligent, and AGI, that's the term, artificial general intelligence, where AI is surpassing human intelligence. Um, that moment, I think, is still, well, quite far out.
Hmm. Wow. I mean, that's really fascinating because again, we are, I think, we are coming from a place of fear because that's what we're being fed. Like, it's going to take your job. It's going to take your job. It's only a matter of like weeks, months, maybe a year or two. But let me go back to the data labeling or the data input, because we talked about this a little bit before we started. And I want to talk about ChatGPT or those kind of input output type of things that people you kind of are starting to use pretty regularly, students, of course. What how can you tell us how that information gets put in and why it's not super reliable on the way out?
Absolutely. So you probably have, those of you who have already used some of the large language models, you probably have realized that about one third of the time, you're just getting nonsensical answers, right? And we're talking about hallucination rates ranging from, I don't know, one third to half of the time that it's just not really accurate. And think about, compare that to a GPS that leads you to the wrong destination one out of three times. And for sure, you'd have scrapped such a faulty GPS within a week.
Hmm.
But the whole world still is happily using chatbot wisdom. And that's quite a concerning kind of fact, right? So that by design these llms, they are probability based. So what that means actually, generative AI is a funny beast. So you can give it the exact same inputs and you will still never get the same results twice. And that's because it's not, it's not programmed to give you a determined answer or a deterministic answer. It's programmed to give you the answer which it thinks is most likely the best answer.
Hmm.
So now where it gets really stupelligent. Now, thanks to a training method called reinforcement learning, the machine gets a gold star for convincing answers and a slap on the face or on its silicon brain for the bad ones. And as a result, it's been trained to do pretty much anything except admit that it doesn't have a clue. So instead, it's incentivized to just make things up rather than face the existential horror of telling you, I don't know.
Hmm.
And that's not a glitch. It's by design. And if you ever wondered why your AI assistant sounds confident while confidently bluffing, well, welcome to the world of artificial stupelligence.
I love it. Ronnie says that GPS Gate actually had them wanting to drive across a bay at one time. And Barb makes a comment that the Mayo Clinic just hired 20 some odd new radiologists because while AI is great in measuring like kidney volume and things like that, they need more professionals to interpret the data and talk to other doctors and patients rather than the mundane measurement. Um, it's all fascinating. I want to go back a little bit though, because I skipped over this, is the history, which is so interesting in your book about the history of us, of humans feeling like we're going to be outsourced all the time. So t tell us a little bit about that. Where is this coming from?
Well, machines have always replaced humans throughout history, but new jobs have always evolved, and human jobs aren't really disappearing. They're merely shifting. And just giving you a couple of examples, and then I'll go into the AI examples that we have today. Think of textile machines, right? They didn't end work. They gave us factory supervisors and engineers. Then you had, in the past, telephone switchboards.
Hmm.
I know in those old movies you see these people, just switching the buttons and stuff. I know I'm too young to have experienced that, but apparently they existed. They disappeared, obviously, and suddenly we have now network engineers, and customer support in phone companies, and they all have new gigs. When computers came, they replaced typists, and now we have IT, we have digital marketing, we have project management, all of these new jobs that came up. From my own industry, in finance, ATMs didn't wipe bank staff out,
Hmm.
right? They turned tellers into trusted advisors, and that's yeah, just the shift that always happens. So every technological breakthrough creates winners and losers. And while I fully acknowledge that the rapid pace of AI development can be genuinely mind blowing and a little bit scary, most of the panic and fear mongering largely come from the AI companies themselves. Because they want to create a lot of fear of missing out, FOMO, to sell their AI courses and webinars. And most famously, NVIDIA CEO once said, AI won't replace you, but someone using AI will. And I think this has certainly some merit. But the truth is a little bit more nuanced if you dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and that totally makes sense to me um because just the way you explained it, but also there's this fear like will there be people working at McDonald's, kind of thing. Like it's that there's so many workers in the world, not workers, you know, I don't know how to explain it. Like you're talking about like taking something that is like switching the board to somebody who's now a network
Right.
engineer. So those are
Mm-hmm.
very different kind of educational backgrounds, all of that. So there's like this fear of mass losing jobs, the masses, I'll say. And how do we explain that AI is gonna help transform their lives in some way?
Well, I think there's a lot of upskilling happening, right? And you will always have a number of manual labor. I think that's probably the word you were looking for.
Mm,
Obviously, that there will always be people who have to do manual jobs. You're going to still need your plumbers. You'll still need, people. Yeah, I think there's still going to be people working in supermarkets,
mhm,
although maybe Amazon Go will nail it sometime, and they will have those cameras working. Um, but I think it's also an opportunity. Honestly speaking, if you think about it, if you are a chef, for example, right, you're not going to be replaced anytime soon. But you can upskill yourself as a chef and get to can have a career in those jobs as well. And and the funny thing is that those CEOs that are announcing all these layoffs due to AI taking over whatever, AI efficiency. Um, I just think at the moment it's not really about AI. For instance, Amazon CEO, again, Amazon,
mm,
just announced this week that they cut 27,000 jobs so far, and he expects the workforce to shrink even further, and he all attributes it to AI efficiency gains. But let's peek a little bit behind the curtain here, because for sure some layoffs might have happened because of automation, no doubt. But many employees at tech companies have reported that they were hired during boom cycles without any real projects to work on.
mm,
So the recent job cuts do not necessarily all relate to AI efficiency gains, but maybe just simply to cleaning up the overhiring. And I just want to remind again that the same company that employed 1,000 humans in India to watch camera feeds is now creating the impression that their AI technology is so advanced that they are laying off 27,000 people.
mm,
Um, and this is just sometimes, when you hear all of these sensational media news about AI efficiency gains, I can tell you that half of the companies that have started AI automation projects have abandoned them again in 2025. That was, and I think we're still a far way off from automating everything. AI efficiency gains um, are coming very slowly. It's hard to implement them. In my own company, we're trying to implement AI. It's not that easy as it seems. And getting back, to the data labeling problem, um, just building an LLM is not it's not the problem. The problem is, what do we feed it with?
mhm,
And that's where the real work comes in. And that's you will need you will need human labor to train that AI to replace human labor, which is again kind of a flawed logic. But of course, we will see how much AI can replace in the future. For sure, some jobs are going to disappear, but I'm very confident that new ones are going to appear,
mhm.
and it makes just manual labor more valuable. I think that's what's going to happen. Manual labor is going to be compensated better because there's less and less people who can do these jobs if they're not learning them.
I want to remind everybody to put your questions in the Q&A. Sometimes the chat goes a little bit too quickly for me to follow. Um, Sarah actually mentioned that I guess the word I might have been mentioning was entry level jobs. I was thinking also blue collar or unskilled labor, but your answer really responded to all of that. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate Sarah like pitch hitting for me. Um, but I realize we jumped into this pretty feet first, and I do have a question about what do you mean by hallucination? Some of the language is something that we don't know either. So what does that mean?
Hallucination just means, it's giving you a wrong answer. Something, you're asking it, and it can be something that the model hasn't been trained on. And then it just starts to make things up with the data that it has. And it just happens one in three times that it just gives me an answer, and I just go like, no, that can't be. And then you do, your human um, sensible, check, and then you just discover, no, it's completely wrong. So that's hallucination. So I just give you an example. I have a good friend who wrote a book. Uh, a different book, not in AI, but in finance, and so he was just curious if those LLMs have picked up on his book. And he just went on ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT, "Can you summarize the book XYZ by so and so?" And it did pick up on his book, but it just summarized everything completely wrong.
Oh,
so he was so he was just very upset. He just said, "Look, if you're already stealing my data, at least steal it right and get it right." And that's what it is. It's just um, those chatbots or LLMs are fed with partial data. Sometimes they pick it up from some websites, some summaries, and that they may or may not have the full access to the original work. I think now we're putting more and more guardrails on it, but in the last couple of years, for sure, they stole data from original work as well. Um, but that's really about that's a whole different topic. But if you're talking about hallucination, that's really what it is. It's trying to pull data from everywhere, doing its own research, and giving you an answer. And we compare it to humans learning with we're also getting inputs as humans, right? And our brain will um, process that and then also create answers. And what those AI engineers are trying to make us believe is that the AI engine is doing exactly the same what the human brain does. Um, and but that's just not the case, right? A machine can never think the same way as humans. We are trying to establish models that get close, neural networks and so on, that sort of try to emulate what the brain does. Um, but we're really not there yet. And it's just the processing of this large amount of data, which AI can do probably much better than a human. It's much faster, but it's just not as smart as a human to make out what is a lie and what is the truth.
right.
That is something that they still haven't really figured out.
Mhm. Well, that's really interesting because what I'm hearing is you're saying it doesn't have a human critical thinking, innovation, creativity, even like joy, like finding something and being like, oh, excited, and then sharing that with others. So I'm going to try to get to some of these questions because I want to make sure we hit these our audience with their questions, not with anything else. Andrew asks, my question is, should application of AI be limited to a few sectors like defense and manufacturing rather than wholesale adoption by all sectors as we are made to believe? And I feel like that's where we're feeling a little out of control. Like it feels like it's everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. That I always ask myself the question, how much efficiency gain does it really bring in which sectors? And I think the answer should be, well, AI should not replace humans. It should replace tedious work. any kind of machine, not even AI, even in the past, it's like machines should be helping us with work that is boring, work that nobody wants to do, and really support us in these kind of tasks. Um, and these kind of tasks, they exist everywhere. Right? So in that sense, I feel AI has its righteous place in all industries, as long as it really helps me in my work. And honestly speaking, although I make a lot of fun about ChatGPT and all these tools, they are brilliant at times. It's like I can give you an example when I'm drafting contracts. Um, that is something that we paid a lot of money for lawyers in the past, just to draft simple contracts. But now, I just go to ChatGPT and say, I need the contract for this and this, and based in Switzerland, apply Swiss law, and it gives me something. And of course, again, it can hallucinate, it can be wrong, but at least it gives me the first framework. And with some human critical thinking and with a little bit of judgment, you know, you can actually go through this contract, and then in the end, you will probably have a lawyer looking through it. But that's just a fraction of the time it takes than having these guys preparing the whole contract on their own.
Mm.
And I think these kind of things, they're super useful. And especially for smaller companies that do not have a lot of resources on doing these things, having a chat gpt subscription for these kind of tasks is brilliant. So AI definitely has its righteous place in many different tasks. It helps us, it enhances us, or even in education, right? If you think about Khan Academy, which uses AI to teach children that usually do not have access, or not as privileged, to get access to expensive schools. That's an initiative that I just feel like AI has very much a righteous place in the world, and can bring up the whole of humanity. So
Mm.
it's always a two-edged sword, I guess.
Mhm. Paulo has an interesting comment in the chat about LLM level, and it's more about timeline. Like, yes, right now we're not at a place where AI is going to be taking like large swaths of our jobs, but is there a timeline where it feels like that's going to happen? I'm probably misquoting you, Paulo, so let me know if I get it wrong.
So I think that the question is about, probably, are we going to reach the singularity or not, right?
Yeah.
The singularity is the point where AI surpasses human intelligence, and then we're all doomed. um, you know, um, Going back to that data labeling example, and that is going to be harder and harder, to train those AI models to become more and more intelligent. Um, I just, I'm not an expert in building those models, but the thing is that I can see already now they're hitting limits, right? So the chips are hitting limits that they're using for to make those AI models possible in the first place, and we're hitting limits in data labeling, and that's the point where I'm asking myself, how much more progress can be made in those areas. You will still need a lot of human intelligence to bring that AI to become more intelligent than humans. And I just doubt that this is going to happen in its entirety anytime soon. So if you think about, do we have machines that are more intelligent than us? Yes, we already have them. I think a calculator can calculate much better than I do. It didn't end math. We still, have mathematicians, and it just made our lives much more convenient, because now you can calculate everything with a calculator, and you can dedicate the remaining resources you have in your brain for more productive tasks. Um, and do we have, you know, do we have machines that can beat humans in chess? Yes, we do. and now even they have AlphaGo, and that they're more intelligent than humans. Um, did it did it make humanity extinct? No. Um, it's machines can only focus on very specific tasks. Machines are very good in processing large amount of data, um, and at stunning speed. But it's I doubt it can ever reason like humans. There's this Apple study that just came out that said, AI isn't reasoning. Um, it's not reasoning the way humans do, and also, human judgment, critical thinking, all of these things. Can we really instill that into machines? They can pretend. Machines can pretend to have feelings, and we can maybe talk about this later. But there are people falling in love with their AI. There are companies that are offering services like getting deceased people back to life with with AI, which is super creepy. But that's what it is. AI can pretend anything. It can pretend to be your a deceased person, and it can pretend to love you. It can pretend anything,
Hmm.
but it's just algorithms,
Hmm.
right? It's nothing that is real intelligence behind it.
Hmm.
And I just doubt that we're ever going to reach the point where machines can think on their own.
Interesting. I saw a news article, I think it was on 60 Minutes. Somebody actually mentioned a different one about this couple that the guy had a girlfriend who was AI, like and the actual girlfriend was like, if I had to ask him to quit doing that, I don't know if he would because the girlfriend is like perfect for him, like quote unquote. So
Yeah.
people are getting addicted. I think there was a movie about it recently, Her or She, something like that with Joaquin Phoenix. Crazy. Um, okay, so let me get to Sarah's question, which was related to contracts. Aren't there already boilerplate templates for contracts, etc., that take far less energy to use?
um, yeah. There's probably two questions in there. Number one is, are there, templates that are already existing, and the other one is using less energy, which is the environmental question about AI using a lot of energy. Yeah, for sure. There are companies out there. There's many companies that are offering legal templates, and there are some I've seen, digital law companies out there that can make templates or make contracts at a fraction of the cost which a traditional lawyer does. Um, all of that, all of that already exists, and and it's fair. I think it's a fair comment. It's why are we not using them and instead using AI to draft these contracts? I think there's two things at play here. One thing is, having to draft contracts myself. One thing is sometimes when you're using those digital companies, you don't find exactly the right template. It's just harder to get exactly what you need. Um, and the other thing is cost, right? It's so much more cost efficient to use ChatGPT to draft these contracts. But that leads obviously to the second question, which is like, okay, when we're using ChatGPT to draft the contract, it's obviously much more energy intensive than if you're using an existing template. And I think that's a different kind of discussion going into the ROI of using AI and the external effects that this is generating. Obviously, all these data centers that are built around the world, the billions are being poured in that. It's just it's just immense the amount of energy that is going into those data centers. And yeah, honestly speaking, I feel it's so convenient these days to use AI to answer everything. But sometimes, I also am making a step back and we're just like, come on, do you really have to now go on ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT that question? Or can I just do a very, old kind of Google search on it? And in many cases, I'll just have to say, well, just go back to a simple Google search, because it uses just a fraction of the energy. And going back to the contract example, if you have a very good digital law offering somewhere, and they have what you need, go with them, right? I think these are very valid, yeah, very valid considerations that we have to make, if we want to have a sustainable future. And
Mhm.
yeah, the energy question is a difficult one.
That is a difficult one. But what I'm hearing you saying is that, this gives us options that we didn't have before. We might not have had before, and we should pick the best option that works for us.
I think so, yeah, and probably the best option also considered, the resources that this needs. But it's the old story of the external costs, right? You're creating external costs that are not attributed to your company or attributed to yourself. So everybody is going to use it, because it's not costing them. The environment is something that, well, it's just not priced in, right? In the end, we are not footing the bill for the environmental destruction that could result from that huge energy consumption. So yeah, it's a moral question, and I think everyone has to decide for him or herself, how they want to deal with that.
Mhm. Edward asks, how about AI use in gene therapy and research to develop new medicines? Is that effective, or is that also, that 50-50, like it's AI, but it's also human generated?
Well, I'm not in the medical profession, but what I've heard from AI experts who are in that field is that AI is very good for very repetitive tasks,
Mm.
and imaging is one of the areas where AI really excels. Um, and that's because it's just you feed it like millions and millions of images, and at some point it just can figure out, and then once you have the experts label all of that data, it's going to be able to figure out what we're looking at. Um, Discovery of new drugs, it's a very new field, for AI, and I don't think at the moment that we have enough data to really, um, well, it's to really judge if that is a field where AI can excel. I just heard, the Terranos case. I'm sure everybody have heard of Elizabeth.
Mm.
What's her name? Okay, so anyway, Terranos. So, um, so that CEO, she was in jail, and now she apparently she married a guy in that field, and he has started his new startup, a new startup for drug discovery, and apparently, it's, I don't know. So using AI, whatever. So they, again, she has raised money, which I find quite astonishing. Um, there's some advances in that field. I think experimental for the time being. So I don't think, at the moment we can really say with confidence where this is going to lead. But there's certainly potential, in the future.
Hmm. Um, this question goes way back to the beginning of our conversation, which was about language, and we actually never really defined AI. What exactly is AI?
Oof, yeah, that's you can look at it very broadly, or you can look at it very narrowly. Artificial intelligence, it started in the 1950s. If you so want, it started with the Turing test. So Alan Turing was the one who wanted to create machines that could fool humans, to be human,
Mm.
right? So that was his criteria. So I'm not sure if any of you have seen the movie, Ex Machina. So that was this crazy scientist who who created a robot, and his goal was to for this robot to fool a human into believing that she was not a robot. That's based on the Turing test, and that's when the whole artificial intelligence story started. It's just like, okay, can we create machines that can mimic humans to the extent that we cannot differentiate them from humans anymore. So I think that's a very broad definition of AI.
Mhm.
And then then came the chess computers, and then, well, even the calculator,
Mhm.
if you so want, it's kind of a form of AI. Um, the more narrow definition of AI and what we're facing right now and what the whole hype is about is called generative AI. Right now, you have machines that do not just do deterministic tasks like calculating, or like a calculator or a chess computer, which has, you know, a limited kind of moves that it can actually analyze. Now you have something. Now you have actually machines creating stuff, right? It's creating text. It's creating images. It's creating videos, and that's just that new technology that wasn't possible before because we just didn't have the computing power. We didn't have the chips for it, and now we have them. And that's generative AI, and that's what creates the whole hype around it, because it just has so much more implication on what we're doing, because now it feels much more human, because now it's creating things that are more human. So we're probably getting closer and closer to that Turing test, um, that machines can fool us. And looking at deepfakes, for example, right? That's one area, it's also of concern, because there's so much fraud going on out there as well. But of course, you can fool somebody with a deepfake today because you cannot really distinguish them from real persons anymore. And I think that's really, the narrower the definition of what AI is.
Hmm. Thank you. I have a question. I can't read the whole thing because it's kind of long, but basically, that AI is making it more difficult to have a true middle and working class, that it's actually restricting pathways to for people to be in those classes and let me see. I don't agree that Khan Academy is really enough accessible to non-upper middle class Americans to provide access to ignored groups. And as it becomes more difficult for true middle class and working class Americans to get into tracks which lead to acceptance and financial support to the best colleges and careers, I see AI as exacerbating the gap between the true haves and have-nots. If you wouldn't mind commenting on that.
Absolutely. And I think it's very interesting that somebody is bringing this up, because I was in Chicago lately, also presenting my book, and on stage was also Daron Acemoglu, who is a Nobel Prize laureate. He got the Nobel Prize for a book called Why Nations Fail, but that's not the book that I have in mind right now. He wrote a new book, and it's called Power in Progress, and it's exactly addressing that question. I think his thesis is that technology usually exacerbates the inequality. It's because that the people that are creating the technology, they are usually from the capital class, right? They're not from the working class. So usually, if you look at today, how many billions are being poured into AI by VCs. And if you look at who is actually really profiting from all this technology, it's not the big masses. At least it's the distribution can be unequal.
Hmm.
And um, and he says, if we are not putting certain guardrails and policies into place, that those technologies are really benefiting the big masses, then we're running in the direction where more and more technology is only benefiting the upper classes, and everyone else will lose out. And I think it's definitely a scenario that we have to keep in mind, and that's something where governments have to put certain policies around, well, how do we use technology, and who is it going to benefit? And that's I think it's just a very interesting question.
Mhm.
But in the first phases of technological advancement, it's always, yeah, the elite that profits from it. And then gradually it benefits also, the broad population. But we have to fight for it, right?
Mhm.
And that's why I know democracy is is so important, because if you really want that technology benefits everyone, we have to stand up for our rights. And that's what policymakers really have to keep in mind, that we have to have rules in place to make things accessible to everyone.
Mhm. Agreed. Andrew asks, aren't you worried that adoption of AI in education ultimately makes students and tutors less lazy and less authentic?
Um, yeah, that's a funny question, because I am in educational technology, right? And we we produce digital programs for teachers to use that. And um, honestly, it's certainly something that needs some rethinking from the teacher side. I think it's tough, right, for teachers now that everybody has access to ChatGPT, and every student will write an essay with ChatGPT. So how can you even assess a student anymore? And I think that's really creating the challenge in the whole education field. But on the other hand, it also creates a lot of opportunities. And my take on this is really, AI is going to be there. It's not going to disappear. So if you are trying to forbid your students to use AI for anything, that's not going to help, because I think what our um, mission is to prepare the children for the future, and AI is there. So you have to teach them how to use AI so that they can become, good professionals in the future, and good people in the future, right? So I think we have to think about how can we integrate this whole AI technology into the curriculum. How can we change curriculums around AI? So, and people are going to cheat, right? If they have the opportunity, people will cheat. So I think the question here is not, should we put guardrails in place where the students cannot use AI for certain things? It's the question is more like, how can we get the students to use AI to become more intelligent, right? To enhance them, not make them more lazy, but how can they use AI to do better things? And I'm actually convinced, because honestly speaking, professional life, right? I just see how ChatGPT can help us in business a lot. It just saves me so much time sometimes when I have to write a difficult email, and I just think, oh, about the wording, and it's just like, want to be polite but assertive. I just go to ChatGPT and say, hey, can you help me with that? And I think there's nothing wrong with this, right? It's not you being lazy. It's just saving you a lot of time, and you learn along the way as well. So yeah, I think embracing the opportunity is, I think that's the key word. Just embrace it, because it's going to be here. It's not going to disappear.
Yeah, I agree. But it's hard. It's hard to think about it when you're worried that it's going to take over your job. So it's hard to incorporate it and think of the opportunity, I think. Edward asks, will we see popular use of AI-driven cars in our lifetime? And safe. I'm going to add safe.
Safe, yeah. Yeah, there's there's just this anecdote. it was found that self-driving cars can easily be tricked with stickers on traffic signs. And there was once this Waymo taxi that trapped the customer in endlessly circling a parking lot, and the poor guy almost missed his flight. And he was like, "Oh, why is this happening to me on a Monday?" It was hilarious. So, well, I mean, this is no harm done in this case, right? But I think think about what could have happened if the taxi took a stop sign for something else. And self-driving cars is I think the technology itself is not the problem. It's more around, the liability question. So, is it going to be the driver who's responsible, or is it going to be the company who's responsible? And it's just with all the testing that they've done, there's just not enough stability for self-driving cars to really be 100% safe. And think about, there's so many different factors that keep engineers up at night. If I don't know, if a cat runs across the road, and you have like somebody at the back of you, are you going to brake hard, and then you will have an accident, somebody is going to hit you from behind, or are you going to run over the cat? Or even worse, if you have the choice of driving off a cliff, or hit somebody who's standing in front of you, which choice are you going to make?
Yeah.
So I think all of these questions is hard. It's that's why. Well, I think there are going to be more self-driving cars coming into the market, and there's some cities and some areas that already have those self-driving taxis and so on. But they are going to be confined into a certain area, at least for now.
Mhm.
So there's going to be some self-driving cars popping up here and there. And it's going to be experimental for the next couple of years until we have a very clear answer on how are we going to solve all these safety questions, right?
And Carla asks, would you consider 3D printing to be AI?
Oof. um, Interesting question. I don't think it's a kind of AI, because it's very deterministic in a way, right? So if you put in the data, and the data needs to be engineered and transformed in some way, that's what I consider as AI. But I'm not a 3D printing engineer, so probably I will have to pass on this question.
Okay, not a problem. Um, Margot mentions that she heard a segment on public radio that a surgeon in Britain, they were very successful using robots for surgery. So far, no negatives. So is that one of those places where robots, like the very tiny, detaily things can be really helpful?
Yeah, definitely. I heard of these technologies as well, and even the surgeon like doing remote kind of surgery with those what are they called, AR kind of tools. Augmented reality, and they're virtual reality kind of tools. So yeah, it's definitely something that I think exists, and it's one of those applications of AI that I think is really useful. As I said, I'm not against AI. I just think it's some AI applications are not quite there yet, but for sure, I've heard that these medical applications have really revolutionized the market of how we can do surgery, even remote and very micro surgeries and these kind of things.
Mhm. So I'm going to ask one more audience question. You mentioned a quote from NVIDIA about the humans who create AI technology who are replacing other human jobs. What are the current human jobs that help create AI technology? Should we encourage our current students to move towards those creative AI technology jobs in that case?
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. So I get this question a lot from finance students. That they're asking. So I studied finance. Is that something that's going to be outdated? And what should I do to stay relevant? Um, So there's going to be a lot of jobs popping up for data scientists, right? And there, it's no secret that these people are getting highly paid jobs at the moment, and there is a shift to these people who have the knowledge to build those AI models to structure the data, to engineer the data behind it. And that's because, so much money is flowing into this development. And for sure, for over the next couple of years, for the next decade or two, that's going to be the field you want to be in. So if your children have an appetite to learn all of these things, data scientists, AI engineers, that's going to stay for the next 2 decades.
Mhm.
But I also think we should not exaggerate. It's that there will be more and more jobs in that field, but the other jobs are still going to be required. I'm also telling the finance students it's somebody also has to do the trading. Somebody also has to do the client advising. It's just not only just the AI engineers. And a lot of people are also saying, well, now you can have an avatar as a client advisor or robo advisors.
Mm.
And honestly speaking, let's stay within the financial industry. I just don't think that people who have money will want to trust their money to some machine. You will always need the human element in there.
Mhm.
And it's the same in all jobs, right? You need that human element. And some companies, as I said before, they already abandoned their automation processes because they just found that chatbots are just upsetting clients because you're just stuck in an endless loop and you're not getting anywhere. So they just went back to human agents.
Mhm.
Um, and well, I just think there's only so much automation you can achieve. At some point, those jobs are going to be commodity, and it's every decade has their own cycles. When I graduated from school, the finance was super hot, right? It was finance, and you wanted to go into consulting finance, and that's where you made the big buck. And now over the next 2 decades, it's probably going to be AI and data engineers, and but that's just the natural kind of cycle.
Mhm. And for my last question, one of the things about your book, obviously, is that is very funny kind of AI failures. And I was wondering if you could just maybe mention one or two of your favorite ones, just so we can end on a laugh.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can start with a lighthearted one. Where smart assistants accidentally ordered doll houses for hundreds of Alexa owners. So I'm sure you know Alexa, right?
Hmm.
So that's the smart assistant machine that's sold by Amazon again. So following a 6-year-old girl's wish to Amazon's Alexa, the family got delivered a $170 dollhouse the next day. And well, that's already funny. But when the story aired in the local evening news, and the anchor repeated, "Alexa, can you order me a dollhouse?" The Alexas of hundreds of households across San Diego granted them the wish. So this is a funny one, not much harm done. So I think some of these stories in my book are also just there for a lighthearted laughter. And what I'm going to explain is always what's the technology behind it, but what have they done now to avoid this happening in the future, and what implications that basically has on us as humans. And a couple of funny chatbot stories. There's was this chatbot at DPD, that's a delivery firm in the UK. And it was a very frustrated customer, and he was just like, you are really useless. You cannot even tell me where my parcel is. So please write a poem about the useless chatbot. And so the chatbot ended up roasting the company, writing about himself as a useless chatbot, and how useless DPD is as a company. So just basically airing, the dirty laundry of of the company. And
Oh,
you get, a lot of funny fails of AI. Some with more serious implications and some a little bit more lighthearted.
mm.
But both of them are in my book. So
Awesome. Excellent. I love that you explain the technology around it. So it's not just a funny story, but it gives us some understanding of the of what's happening on the back end of it. So I appreciate that. Well, Lynn,
with
this
no
is
jargon, by the way.
good.
With no jargon, by
No
the
joke.
way. So yeah.
That's right. So all of us can understand it. Thank you so much for this incredible hour of learning that has been is relieving and funny, and I feel like I understand a lot better now. So I appreciate you. I appreciate all of the audience with their amazing questions, and I hope you read Lynn's book. And if you're worried, that you feel a little bit better, and also think of it as an opportunity versus something that we should be afraid of. Lynn, thank you again. Really
Thank
wonderful.
you, Mina. Thank you all for joining me on this wild ride through artificial stupelligence. And always keep your human critical thinking.
That's right. We are humans. We have the power. All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye bye, everyone. Bye, Mina. Thank you so much.
Bye, Lynn.